Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Respected ulama, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum. The time is now 9:05 and we will begin our program tonight. Tonight marks the 5th of Muharram, and our program will begin with a presentation from Brother Yahya Rostu. This will then be followed by tonight's lecture led by Hujjatul Islam, Sayyid Sulayman Hasan Abidi. Again, as I have reminded all of you in nights past, before we begin our program, please double check your cell phones to make sure that they are in fact on mute or at least on vibrate. At this time, I would like to request Brother Yahya Rostu to please come forward at this time. Please greet him with a loud salawat.
Writing two poems. The first is entitled I Am Aun. Bismillah. I am Aun, brother of Muhammad, sons of Zainab. In our veins, the blood of he who defeated Marhab. We will turn their day into their night. They will learn from us how they should fight. We will turn their day into their night. They will learn from us how they should fight. The morning broke, no one spoke, except when Hussein gave them permission. Except when Hussein gave them permission. This is that time, stand in line. Every one of them knew his position. Every one of them knew his position. He prepared them, saying, listen, aim for the army's back row. Give your chest to the heavens when you see the raining arrows. It is only a few minutes of playing swords with our foe. Then you will be somewhere that rivers beneath you they will flow. Then you will be somewhere that rivers beneath you they will flow. Beneath them, only blood will flow, uncle, beneath them. We don't want heaven and we don't fear from Jahannam, but the way they hold their swords isn't right. We should teach these men how they should fight. I am Aun, brother of Muhammad, sons of Zainab. In our veins, the blood of he who defeated Marhab. We will turn their day into their night. They will learn from us how they should fight. We will turn their day into their night. They will learn from us how they should fight. They saw two, they thought few. How wrong were they when they saw them battle? How wrong were they when they saw them battle? Their surprise in their eyes, two wolves rounding up a herd of cattle. Two wolves rounding up a herd of cattle. And in the world of a wolf you die fighting for one another. What if Hussein is your uncle and Zainab is your mother? First the enemy ran to them, then they all ran for cover. Lions don't concern themselves with all the sheep if they gather. Lions don't concern themselves with all the sheep if they gather. But the laws of gravity they cannot be denied. To their Lord, these young men were gravitating with pride. But before leaving, let's be polite. We should teach these men how they should fight. I am Aun, brother of Muhammad, sons of Zainab. In our veins, the blood of he who defeated Marhab. We will turn their day into their night. They will learn from us how they should fight. We will turn their day into their night. They will learn from us how they should fight. The hour drew, and who knew? A lion is a lion, however old. A lion is a lion, however old. Their display on that day How wrong were their display on that day. They put in the word soldiers their souls. They put in the word soldiers their souls. Sacrificing her children, don't you ever think was easy. She said, if this pleases you, Lord, then take until you are pleased. Broken-hearted feelings, they mixed with feeling serenity. The enemy saw death bitter, all she saw was beauty. The enemy saw death bitter, all she saw was beauty. Heaven is under the feet of your mothers, they say. Zainab was an angel standing in heaven on that day. What she saw, beauty in her eyesight, her young boys teaching men how to fight. I am own brother of Muhammad, sons of Zainab. In our veins, the blood of he who defeated Marhab. We will turn their day into their night. They will learn from us how they should fight. We will turn their day into their night. They will learn from us how they should fight. Salawat. The second poem is titled, Where Are Your Hands? Bismillah. Where are your hands to wipe the tears they're crying upon these sands? From thirst these girls are dying, your banner stands. For Abbas it is calling, where are your hands? Is it the day of judgment? Fires are burning your tents, they cry, holding my garment. Abbas, Abbas. They saw your flag had fallen, confused, their only children. One name by them is spoken, Abbas, Abbas. Their skin covered, no longer white, in ashes. Their eyes watch your tent set alight, in pieces, running from your tent in their fright. It crashes. It cannot be that the tent of Abbas falls. It cannot be these queens unguarded by walls. It cannot be. No, Abbas answers their calls. Where are your hands? Where are your hands to wipe the tears they're crying upon these sands? From thirst these girls are dying, your banner stands. For Abbas it is calling, where are your hands? The last thing they remember, on his horse their flag bearer, leaving to bring them water. Abbas, Abbas. Auntie, has he not come back? Our tongues from thirst have turned black. They faint, resting on my back. Abbas, Abbas. How many hands tug on my dress, O brother? I raise my hands, may Allah bless them water, in the form of our courageous flag bearer. Where are your eyes to gaze upon our anguish? Where are your eyes to watch the fire flourish? Where are your eyes whose sight makes despair vanish? Where are your hands? Where are your hands to wipe the tears they're crying upon these sands? From thirst these girls are dying, your banner stands. For Abbas it is calling, where are your hands? Could it be that your two palms that rip apart all our harms are not attached to your arms? Abbas, Abbas, could it be that an arrow has broken your sister's bow, and blood from your eye would flow? Abbas, Abbas, did your body fall to the ground? It's shaking. I hear from Hussein's back a sound. It's breaking. Has our Uncle Abbas been found? They're asking. Lord, give him wings to fly towards these children. Lord, give him wings, carrying water within. Lord, give him wings. From his wings their throats broken. Where are your hands? Where are your hands to wipe the tears they're crying upon these sands? From thirst these girls are dying, your banner stands. For Abbas it is calling, where are your hands? صلوا على محمد وآل محمد.
MashaAllah. For Brother Yahya, Sehed, Salamti, and Khair Barakat, please recite a loud salawat. I'd now like to share some important community announcements. As we're getting closer to the day of Ashura, I'd like to start mentioning what the upcoming program is going to look like. So this coming Friday, we will be observing the day of Ashura. That day will begin with the Amal of the day of Ashura at 8 a.m. Subsequently, we will reconvene for Jummah at 1 p.m. This will be followed by the English Majlis and then the Urdu Majlis. And then we will have Ziyarat at 4 p.m. followed by Faqa Shikni. Later in the evening, we will have Sham-e Ghariba, which will begin with Salat al-Maghrib at 8:30 p.m. This will be followed by Salam and Marsiya, and then again we will have the English Majlis and then the Urdu Majlis. And at 10 p.m. we will have Salam-e-Akhir. This will be concluded with Matam and Ziyarat. Additionally, as I've been mentioning every evening, there's only tonight and tomorrow that remains for the timescape that was being held by the Children's Workshop. If you haven't had a chance yet, please do so. It will be available for viewing 30 minutes after the Majlis. And then once again, an additional reminder for the blood drive. Inshallah, on your way back up after the lecture tonight, please do stop by the desk in the foyer area and do register for the blood drive, which will be held on August 6th from 10 to 4 p.m. I would now like to recognize our sponsors for tonight's program. For the health, safety, and continued blessings for brothers Ali and Hassan Jafri and their respective families, please recite a loud salawat. Salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. The sponsors have requested that you remember the marhumin of your families as well as the marhumin of their families in particular. Ali Imran Jabri, son of Yusuf Hussain Jafri. Ali Imran Jafri, son of Yusuf Hussain Jafri. Faiza Khatun, daughter of Bakr Hussain. Irtiza Hussain Shah, son of Mir Muhammad Hussain Shah. For all of these marhumin and your marhumin, please recite a Surah Fatiha preceded by a Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. One final humble request on behalf of the Bethlehem committees. We are collecting for the Muharram fund to help cover expenses for these programs. You may have seen black donation boxes upstairs in the hallways and in the foyer. For those of you who wish to donate, any and all contributions would certainly be greatly appreciated. At this time, I would now like to request Hujjat al-Islam, Sayyid Sulayman Hasan Abidi, to please come to the minbar at this time. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
صلوات على محمد وآل محمد. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين بارئ الخلائق أجمعين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين المبعوث رحمة للعالمين، شفيع المذنبين وحبيب قلوب الصادقين، سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآله وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين الهداة المهديين المظلومين، ولعنة الله على أعدائهم إلى قيام يوم الدين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. أما بعد، فقد قال الله عز وجل في القرآن المجيد: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل إن صلاتي ونسكي ومحياي ومماتي لله رب العالمين لا شريك له، وبذلك أمرت وأنا أول المسلمين. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. Dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We have been examining the message of this verse in Surah Al-An'am, in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands our Prophet to say, "My prayer and my worship, my life and my death is for Allah, the Lord of the worlds." A definition with very few words, but comprehensive meaning of our existence and its purpose and its direction and its destination. That everything that we do and everything that we have and everything that we are is not ours, but rather it and we ourselves are for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in reality, that is the only way that you can have your own life and your own dignity. It is by giving it and dedicating it to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Through that experience of living life, we discover that we have various kinds of tests. Allah will subject us to adversity, to trials, to different kinds of tests. They are called in the Quran bala or ibtila or fitna, different words for a similar meaning with some fine distinctions between them that are mentioned by those who have written commentaries of the Quranic verses and the ahadith of the Prophet and Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salatu wassalam. But all of those different types of tests, they are part of the logic and the purpose of our life. And so we should not flee from God's test. It's mentioned in Nahj al-Balagha that Amir al-Mu'mineen Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salatu wassalam he said to people, don't say A'udhu billahi min al-fitan. I seek refuge in God. I seek protection in God from trial, from fitna, from God's tests. The Quran says, حَسِبَ النَّاسُ أَن يُتْرَكُوا أَن يَقُولُوا آمَنَّا وَهُمْ لَا يُفْتَنُونَ. Do people think that Allah will just leave them to say that we believe, we have faith, and that He will not try them? Allah wants us to experience those trials because of the benefit that it brings to our soul and our faith and the elevation that it brings to our spirituality. Now, some people, when they hear about what it's like to be tested, they say, I seek God's refuge from having to undergo that test. And Imam Ali says that is the wrong prayer to make. It's kind of like if there is a stage of growing up and you find out that there is some difficulty or some hardship in going through that rite of passage, through that stage. The proper response is not to say, oh, it hurts when your teeth fall out. I hope my teeth never fall out. I hope I keep my baby teeth until the day I die, the ripe age of 170. If you find out that it is sometimes stressful to sit in a test in school, the proper response is not to say that I don't want to take the test and I don't care about graduating and learning and advancing. I want to avoid that test or that stage in my life. The proper response is to say that I want to succeed in that test. If I have to sit for a stressful exam, then I want to pass it. If I have to undergo hardship, then I want to do so with my faith and my values intact. And so Imam Ali alayhi salam said, don't say, A'udhu billahi min al-fitan, because everybody is going to be tested. That is a prayer that shall not be answered because it is not answerable. It's not in line with the purpose of your life. It would be like saying, oh Allah, I don't want to die. Well, you're still going to die. There are better prayers and better goals to have and things to ask of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that will make your life meaningful and that will make your death easy. But one of them is not to say to Allah, I don't want to die, because that is not going to bring you immortality. So what instead should you pray? The Imam says that you should say, A'udhu billahi min mudillatil fitan. There are those tests that take you away from what is good, that make you deviate from the straight path, that cause you to be misguided. Pray to Allah that He never gives you that type of a test, and that whatever trials He gives you in life, you keep your wits and your faith and your values intact, and rather that you strengthen them, rather than weaken or lose them. That is a prayer to ask, because that is in line with the goal of God's tests. That is in line with the fabric and the nature of our existence, to be tested, but to do so with awareness and with trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If I pray to Allah not to test me, not only is that not answerable, but also it is not desirable. When the Quran says, إِنَّمَا أَمْوَالُكُمْ وَأَوْلَادُكُمْ فِتْنَةٌ, your wealth is a test. Your children are a test. And those are two examples. We can add and extend that. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Inshallah, the microphone is working. Let's say one more salawat, inshallah. Is everybody able to hear me? Inshallah. If I pray to Allah not to have fitna, then I am praying to Allah, don't give me any property or any wealth. And most of the people who don't want to be tested, they're not asking for Allah to take away all their money and all their property and all their toys. But that's what would be required for you to ask Allah not to test you. You wouldn't have any children or any family, and those are just two of the most powerful examples, because anything that you have, any blessing, any gift, anything that Allah has given you, it is a means of testing. So it is not possible and it is not desirable, but what is possible and what is desirable, and in fact what is our goal and our task, is to say that, oh Allah, through those tests, give us strength and give us faith. So we don't say, أعوذ بالله من الفتن. We say, أعوذ بالله من مضلات الفتن. I seek refuge in Allah from any fitna or any test that will cause me to deviate. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. In talking about those tests, as we mentioned in previous nights, the key attribute that will allow us to triumph and succeed in the tests that God gives us is sabr, is forbearance, patience, fortitude, stoicism, those attributes that describe a person's strength of character and discipline in being able to express their feelings in a healthy and a constructive way, and not just to express things without thinking about it and without disciplining ourselves. That when we are subject to hardship, we say, Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Sometimes in our popular imagination, we associate Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un with someone's death. But it is not exclusive to a tragedy like the death of a loved one. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un is a statement of our existence. In the words of Amir al-Mu'mineen Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salatu wassalam, when you say Inna lillah, that is iqrarum minka bil milk. You are acknowledging that you are owned by Allah. And when you say wa inna ilayhi raji'un, you are iqrarum minka bil halak. You are acknowledging that your physical and material existence will come to an end, and that you have a direction that is not of this material world. That is our reality. إِقْرَارٌ مِّنْكَ بِالْمِلْكِ وَإِقْرَارٌ مِّنْكَ بِالْهَلَاكِ. That's not just at times of death or severe adversity. That is anywhere in our life. And so it is the sunnah and the teaching of Ahlul Bayt that whenever any trial, and in particular any affliction and musibah comes, الَّذِينَ إِذَا أَصَابَتْهُمْ مُصِيبَةٌ, when you have an affliction, then the first thing that comes to your lips should be Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. And not only when you suffer an affliction, severe or minor, but even if you remember a hardship that you faced years ago, when you are experiencing it, or even when you remember it, then orient yourself towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by repeating Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. That is what gives strength, and perhaps that is one reason why the remembrance of Allah and the dhikr that Imam Hussein alayhi salatu wasalam recited more than any other on the day of Ashura was Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un, because it gives strength to a believer. And according to ahadith, if Allah honors you by allowing you to remember to say Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un at the time of affliction or at the time of remembering an affliction, then know that that calamity will not be to your detriment. That itself is a sign of divine favor and divine mercy, that when you were subjected to a hardship, Allah inspired you and reminded you to dedicate your existence and your life to Him. So this sabr is the fundamental attribute of a believer. And in light of a hadith of our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wa we mentioned that sabr has three components. Sabr عند المصيبة, at times of hardship. Sabr على الطاعة, in obeying Allah. And sabr عن المعصية, forbearance in avoiding what is sinful and disobedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Together, those three types of forbearance, they constitute sabr. And that sabr will be a means to complete any deficiency in our actions and our practice as believers. There is a saying of our sixth Imam, Imam Ja'far ibn Muhammad al-Sadiq alayhi as-salam, that when a believer dies and enters into the grave, then one of the scariest moments in the beginning of a person's eternal life is when they come into that new home, the grave, and then the angels come to question us about our lives. Those of you who have ever gotten a letter that you are going to be subjected to an audit, you know how nerve-wracking it can be. Those of you who ever have had the honor of being escorted off a plane for a random check and questioning know how stressful it can be. Those of you who may not have experienced an audit and may not have experienced being pulled aside from an airplane, those of you who are younger, when your mom calls your name in that special accent, in a slightly louder voice than normal, and you freeze, you know how stressful that can be. That is going to be the first and one of the most difficult stages in our life in the hereafter, when we are in the grave and we have to account for everything that we did, everything that we said, everything that we didn't do that we should have done. Every opportunity, every act, every omission, every mistake in our life. The things that are on the edge of my memory that I forgot. The things that I tried to forget and almost succeeded. Allah did not forget. And the angels will bring the account. And during that time, according to this hadith of Imam Ja'far Sadiq alayhi salatu wassalam, you'll be in the grave, the angels will come, and you'll have an advocate. Your prayer will come and stand on your right side. Your zakat and your alms in the way of Allah will stand on your left side. Your birr, or the good deeds that you did in general, all of the good deeds that you did, they will kind of stand above you and cast a shadow over you or watch over you. The hadith says either mudil or mutil, which means either casting a shadow, giving shade, or watching over. Most likely mutil is the better reading of the hadith. So prayer on the right, zakat on the left, good deeds watching over you. You're covered. But then your sabr will stand at a distance. Your forbearance. Every time you were frustrated, but rather than say something obscene or vulgar or crude, you said, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Every time you saw a sin, and rather than saying, that looks like it's interesting, that looks like it would be fun, you said, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Every time you had an obligation, and it seems like you just don't have the energy. You know that the time for prayer is there, and you've worked harder than normal and you're tired, but rather than ignore it or delay it or not do it, you say, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. This is an obligation, I need to do it. At times of ta'ah, at times of ma'siyah, at times of musibah, all of that forbearance that you had, and that becomes part of your soul, that will stand at a distance. And then the angels will come to ask you about everything in your life. The good, the bad, the forgotten, the remembered. And then the sabr will say to the prayer and to the zakat and to the good deeds, go and take care of advocating for and defending this believer. And if there is ever anything that you are unable to answer, then I am standing here and I will come and I will complete that defense and that advocacy to provide forgiveness and mercy to this believer. That is the importance of forbearance and sabr in salvation and in the success of a human being. It isn't just how much we do or how much we give, but it is the attribute of forbearance and sincerity to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we observe and we strengthen within our soul. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And that will be there to guide us, to protect us, and to defend us. At this first stage in the grave and afterwards, on the different stages of our journey to our eternal abode. We've spoken a little bit about patience in the face of sin, and patience when it comes to obedience to Allah. But what about adversity? Many of us have it very good in life. And sometimes we have it so good that we don't appreciate how fortunate and how lucky we are. There's some people who don't believe in God, and because they have an inkling of how fortunate they are, they have a profound sense of guilt that I didn't earn this. There are other people who are just as human as I am, and they are suffering. That's because they don't understand that fortune is a test. It's not a coincidence. It's not luck of the draw. But it is a test like any other. The Quran says, نَبْلُوكُمْ بِالشَّرِّ وَالْخَيْرِ فِتْنَةً. I think that somebody who has everything is lucky. And somebody who is very poor is unlucky. But in reality, there is more that is similar between them than different. They are both being tested. They are being tested in different ways. But the fact that they are being tested is shared among both the ones who are healthy and the ones who are ill. I see them as being in opposite directions. But in spite of their different circumstances, they are both being tested. So when everything is a test, we shouldn't ignore our fortune and think that it is a coincidence, and we shouldn't feel guilty about it, but we should appreciate that it gives us a responsibility. There are many people, because they have it good, they change their baseline of what is a problem, and now small things seem like the end of the world. You've heard the term first world problems? For people who are experiencing, they're not first world problems. They are sometimes very stressful and sometimes a difficulty that I can't move past, even if in the grand scheme of things it is a much easier test than many other people have. Imam Ali has a reminder for us if we are ever stuck on our first world problems. That, for example, I have to share my toys with somebody else. I want it for myself, but I have to share. That, for example, I have a family and I have loved ones, but sometimes they make demands on me that are a little inconvenient or uncomfortable. Now, in many cases, I benefit from their company. I benefit from having so many people in my life, but sometimes there is also an inconvenience or there is a difference of opinion. But if I can't get over that disagreement or that fight, or how did they say that to me, or why did they do this, or why did they say this, then it is a small problem, and I am making it into a grave problem, not getting over it even maybe after hours or days or weeks. Imam Ali alayhi salatu wassalam says, Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad, Man azzama sigar al-masa'ib, ibtalahu Allahu bikibariha. If you make a big deal about small issues that you should be able to keep in perspective, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will subject you to great problems. That's a psychological reality as well. Because if everything is a crisis, then gradually I will spiral and my life will come and face real crises that are not just in my imagination. But it is also a spiritual reality, which is that if Allah sees that I am not grateful for all the blessings that He has given me, then He will subject me to greater hardships as a punishment. So how can I protect myself from that? Well, the gratitude and the recognition and the appreciation for how lucky we are and how fortunate we are to have been given so much by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not as a coincidence but through His wisdom and plan, is one way for us to keep our perspective. Because when I am grateful to Allah, then I will realize that everything that God has given me is a responsibility. If you are smart and your friends need to study and you can kind of just wake up, never crack open your textbook, go to class and get an A, that's not God's excuse for you to be lazy. That's not God telling you that you're better than all of those not so smart kids. That's a responsibility. Not so that you use the intelligence to get ahead and benefit yourself, but you use that gift that God has given you to get ahead and bring your community and humanity ahead. Because not everybody has the opportunities to study that you have, and not everybody has the memory or the intellect that you have, and any other talent or any other ability or any other experience or any other resource that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you is the same way. If I recognize that it comes from God, and I recognize that that gift that comes from God is a responsibility and it's not just my property to do with and to utilize as I will, then I will keep everything in perspective. Those first world problems might bother me a little bit, but in their proper proportion and not more than that, because I have a greater sense of purpose and perspective in my life. So then what are true hardships or adversities? If I shouldn't make a big deal about the fact that my parents didn't give me the birthday gift that I wanted, or I didn't make the sports team that I wanted to, or other smaller or greater problems that may exist in my life. To keep that sense of proportion, it is important for me to know what are true calamities. So everything else can be measured in proportion. And I'm not trying to say that everything else that we may experience is small and insignificant. There are real hard challenges that we have in life. But we have to have a standard to know what is a true calamity, what is a moderate calamity, and what is not one at all. A lot of people tell me that I am really tall. But that's because you've never seen somebody who is 7 feet or 8 feet tall. If I were to stand somebody who is 8 feet tall, then I would look very short. There is a basis of comparison, and depending on what your standard is, that same person that seems to be very smart might just be average. That same person that seems to be very athletic might seem to be below average. That same person who seems very tall might not seem so tall anymore. So what is that standard that we have? What are the most severe tests? That is something that the teachings of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salatu wassalam, they tell us to get our calibration in proper order. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Imam Ali was asked, Ma ashaddul bala? What is the most severe calamity? And very simply, the Imam answered, Fid Deen. If you have a trial in your religion, a crisis of practice or faith, that is the most severe trial. Generally, we get stressed when something goes wrong in our material existence. At work, at school, if we get a speeding ticket, if something goes wrong in our material life, then we get stressed. If I get put on probation at school, for example, or if I get a suspended license, then I may have some worry and some concern. But when I have a suspended participation in my religious life and my community, or I am put on probation by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then we don't think that that is as big a deal. It doesn't cause us that same kind of stress. If I get called to court, I want a lawyer. But if I am not motivated to come to the masjid, then I don't feel like I need an advocate and I need an advisor and I need a means to come back. So Imam Ali says that if you want to calibrate your life, then all of those are tests and all of those are hardships. But ashaddul bala fid deen is in your religion. And in another hadith, Imam Ali alayhi salatu wassalam says, that أعظم البلاء الوله بالدنيا. Now this is another standard, another calibration. What is the gravest and the worst kind of a calamity is if I am infatuated with this world. This is another one of those things that many of us, we wake up, we go to sleep, and the things that I think about and I dream about and I watch TikTok videos about and I research and I plan for are all about this world. My next meal, my next experience, the places I want to go, the things I want to buy, the things I want to have, everything is about this world. And we get excited. And we don't realize that in the logic and in the value system of Ahlul Bayt is أعظم البلاء الوله بالدنيا. If you are so infatuated with the world that when you think of travel, the first and the only place that you think about is for fun and not for God. When you think about how to use your time, the first and the only thing you think about is entertainment and not God. If you have to spend your resources, if you have money that you have received as a gift or from your own earning, and the first and the only thing that you think about is what you can do to get the pleasures of this world, then that is wala bid-dunya. You are infatuated with this world. The sign is that that's all you can think about. When you crave something, when you're infatuated with something, how do you know that that is the case? You can't get it out of your mind. And if that's the only thing in your mind, it might not seem like a crisis, but that is a grave crisis. It means something needs to change about what I do with my energy and where I spend my time and whom I associate with and what things do I watch or do I read. Because if my mind is filled with this world, then the space that should belong to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is empty. And then in a hadith of our fifth Imam, Imam Muhammad al-Baqir alayhi salatu wassalam, he says, لا مصيبة كاستهانتك بالذنب ورضاك بالحالة التي أنت عليها. The two greatest calamities that you can have in life. One is that you think that a sin that you committed is not that big a deal. I didn't wake up for Fajr today? Yeah, but does God really expect me to wake up every day? I mean, come on. I had prayed 10 days in a row on time. One day I missed it. Come on. Or another sin that I commit. I don't want to go through a list of sins that I may have committed or you may have committed, but we can all imagine some things that we realized were wrong and then we kind of justified it to ourselves. So that is one musibah. And then Imam Baqir alayhi salam adds a second. He says, وَرِضَاكَ بِالْحَالَةِ الَّتِي أَنْتَ عَلَيْهَا. If you think you're doing okay, if you're complacent, and you're satisfied with whatever spiritual state you are on, that is a sign that you are spiritually dead or on your deathbed. Because if you don't want to improve, if you don't want to learn more about your religion, if you don't want to improve your practice of your religion, then the purpose for which you have been given life and your body and all of these blessings is being forgotten. When I think that I know enough, I don't need to study. I do enough, I don't need to improve. I am pretty good where I'm at. And I don't need to move ahead. Then that is the death of the soul. That complacency and that satisfaction means that there is something fundamentally wrong in my spiritual life. My soul is in the ICU, and I am just barely perhaps alive. And I'm celebrating and living my life as if nothing is wrong. So these are the true calamities. To lose sense of faith, to become complacent and not feel a need to improve, to think that a mistake or a sin that I commit is not a big deal. That is how I calibrate my understanding of what is a musibah. And then everything else becomes easier to bear. There is a narration that a person came to our fourth Imam, Imam Ali ibn al-Husayn Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salatu was-salam. And he complained of some musibah that he was suffering. And Imam Zayn al-Abidin said everybody has three major calamities that they undergo every day. But they don't realize it. And because they don't realize it, these types of calamities that you think are such a big deal, they seem so important and they stop you in your tracks. The person said, so what are those calamities that you are referring to? The Imam said, well, every day you lose one day. If I find out that there is money missing from my account, or there are valuables missing from my life, then I will lose sleep over it. I'll try to figure out what's going on and how I can get it back, and do I need to make a police report? But the Imam said that money, you might get it back the next day. Allah can take it and Allah can give it away. The day that you lost, you're not getting it back. But yet you don't realize that if you spent a day or wasted a day, then you have suffered a loss. Then the Imam says the second calamity is that you are utilizing the sustenance that Allah has apportioned for you in life. فَإِنْ كَانَ حَلَالًا حُوسِبَ عَلَيْهِ وَإِنْ كَانَ حَرَامًا عُوقِبَ عَلَيْهِ. And if that rizq was halal, then you have to account for it. And if it was haram, then you are going to be punished for it. We eat, we spend, we live our life, and we don't think that there is a crisis brewing over our heads that I am going to have to answer for all that I did in this world. If it was halal, I have to account. And if it is haram, then I will be punished. And then the Imam says the third is the greatest. And this is that every day that passes, you are coming closer to your eternal life. And you don't know whether it is paradise or it is hell that you are approaching. So you lose a day, and you utilize God's sustenance that you will have to account for. And you are coming closer to your eternal life, and you have no guarantee that you will be rewarded and that you will go to heaven. And these three calamities, they come every day. And yet I am worried about so many irrelevant or relatively insignificant things in my life, and I forget these important matters. If I give attention to these important matters, then everything else will fall into perspective, and I will be able to take it at the level that I should give it attention. This is articulated in words attributed to our sixth Imam, Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salatu wassalam, at the time of any adversity. So the short and easy dhikr or remembrance to say is, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. But if you want to flesh that out and expand it and understand it better, then our sixth Imam, whenever he had an affliction, he would say a few words. He would say, Alhamdulillahi alladhi lam yaj'al musibati fi dini. First of all, praise be to Allah that He made my suffering monetary loss, or financial loss, or something else going on in my life, but He didn't make my loss a loss of my religion and my faith, because that would be a true calamity. Alhamdulillahi alladhi lam yaj'al musibati fi dini. والحمد لله الذي لو شاء أن يجعل مصيبتي أعظم مما كانت. Praise be to Allah that if He wished this calamity that seems a big deal to me, if He wished, He could have made it even more severe. I am sick and that bothers me, but I am alive. If Allah wished, it could have been worse. I suffered a financial loss, but I still have my life and my health. And if Allah willed, it could have been worse. Or anything that I may think is a big deal, when I realize that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose this level of a test for me, because He knew that I can succeed in this test, that does not make it easy, but it makes it easier for me to deal and succeed in that test. Allah didn't make it more severe than He did. And finally, the Imam would say, Walhamdulillahi ala al-amri alladhi sha'a an yakun fakan. Praise be to Allah for a matter that He decreed, and therefore it came to pass. To recognize that it's not a coincidence. That in itself gives you strength. To recognize that somebody who loves you is subjecting you to this test. It is said in narrations that once our sixth Imam, Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salatu wassalam, he lost one of his children. And after he had buried that child, he said, Praise be to Allah, who takes the life of my loved one, and it only increases me in love for him. Because if Allah took the life of my loved one, then I know that it was in His mercy and in His love. And because this was best for me and best for that one that I lost. And so even though it is a hardship, but it increases my love and my devotion to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Alhamdulillahi ala al-amri alladhi sha'a an yakun fakan. Praise be to Allah that if He decreed it and it came to pass, then it was in my interest and it was to my benefit. That is how a believer deals with musibah and calamity. And if you look in Karbala, then you find Ummul Masa'ib, the mother of calamities, showing us how it is possible to suffer the most severe loss and to maintain your dignity and your faith as a role model for humanity. Zainab salamullahi alayha was a woman who dedicated her life to the mission of Islam. Even before Karbala, history tells us that she was so devoted to Imam Hussein that she was inseparable from her brother. And when Imam Hussein left Medina, her husband Abdullah ibn Ja'far was ill. She had an obligation to take care of her husband. But she also had a covenant that she had made to Allah to never separate herself from Imam Hussein. Abdullah ibn Ja'far knew of that covenant. And he said that, "O Zainab, it pains me that I am not well enough to go to Karbala, but you will represent me. And my sons Aoun and Muhammad will represent me in Karbala." And so Zainab, she bid farewell to the city of the Prophet, to the grave of Rasulullah, to the grave of her mother Fatima Zahra, and she was with Imam Hussein every step of the way. When the day of Ashura came, Lady Zainab, she was now in charge of the women and the children, strengthening them, consoling them. And as every martyr fell in battle, Imam Hussein would bring the body back to the tent, and then Lady Zainab would come by his side, and when the Imam would go to console a wife at the martyrdom of her husband, or a mother at the death of her son, then Lady Zainab would be there by the side of the Imam to offer her condolences and to hold them as they wept in her arms. But Lady Zainab was also preparing a sacrifice of her own. On the eve of Ashura, she called her sons Aoun and Muhammad before her. And maybe she would have told them that a mother has many dreams for her children. And mothers spend many sleepless nights seeking the health and the well-being of their children. But Lady Zainab is going to spend one sleepless night on the eve of Ashura preparing her children for battle. She told them that, "O my sons, tomorrow the companions of Imam Hussein will go and face the enemy. Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas, Ali Akbar, all of the youth of Bani Hashim, they will go forth. My sons, don't let your mother be embarrassed. If you do not become the first martyrs in the path and in the service of Imam Hussein." Aoun and Muhammad, they made a pledge to their mother that before anyone else they would go and offer their life to Imam Hussein. But when the day of Ashura came, every time they approached Imam Hussein, he broke down in tears. And he sent them back, sometimes saying that your elderly father is in Medina and he is not here. Sometimes saying that your mother will not be able to bear your loss. Sometimes saying that I will not be able to bear your loss. Until Lady Zainab, she called her sons before her. And she said, "Did you not promise me that you will offer your life in the way of Allah? Why, my beloved sons, are you still alive?" And they said that every time we ask Imam Hussein, tears come to his eyes, and he breaks down crying. We don't have the heart to ask him. And now Lady Zainab took her sons in her own arms, and she brought them before her brother. In his life, Imam Hussein had never said no to Zainab. And now she is coming to ask him one final favor. And she says that, "Oh my beloved brother, I ask you, by the honor and the memory of our mother Fatima Zahra, will you accept my sons as martyrs in your path?" Now Imam Hussein, who has never said no to his sister and has been reminded of the memory of his mother, what can he answer? How can he say yes? And how can he say no? He says, "Zainab, if this is your wish, then it is my agreement to do whatever you command." Lady Zainab, she prepared her sons for battle with pride, with honor. She gave them their weapon. She placed upon them their armor. And then she prayed over them that Allah watch over them as they go to face the enemy. Those two young men, they went before the enemy, two young men from the family of the Prophet, against a sea of wretched soldiers. They fought together, and whenever one was surrounded, the other brother would come to his defense, until in the thick of battle they were separated, and they called out to one another, trying to reunite, but they were not able to come together. Each of them was martyred, and each of them calls out to Imam Hussein. He is one person, and he is being summoned by his two nephews. The Imam turns to Abu Fadl Abbas, and Imam Hussein goes to the side of one of his nephews. Abu Fadl Abbas goes to the side of the other of his nephews. They reach their beloved young warriors and bring them back to the tent. And now Imam Hussein is looking to see, where is his sister Zainab? How is he going to tell her that the fruit of her life and the apple of her eye, they have now been martyred? Imam Hussein looks, and unlike when any other martyr came back, he saw that Lady Zainab is not standing outside, waiting for him to return to the battlefield. She looks further and sees that Lady Zainab is in her tent. He comes to the door of the tent, and he observes that Lady Zainab now, for the first time since she entered the land of Karbala, is at peace. And she is in prostration, and she is thanking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He has accepted her offering in the way of Allah. Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Oh Allah, you test us throughout our lives, but we ask you that whatever test you give us the strength to pass and succeed in those tests. When we have hardship, then through the example of Imam Hussein and Lady Zainab, grant us the strength to be able to triumph in our trials. And oh Allah, grant us sabr that will come to our aid in the grave and on the day of judgment, and that will cause us to enter paradise in the company of Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad alayhi wassalam. Salawat ala Muhammad wa alihi.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Brothers and sisters, as you make your way upstairs, we were requested to just make one more reminder about the blood drive. They are waiting upstairs in the lobby. Please do try and register if at all possible. Thank you.